Can start? Okay. I know you know how already to provoke your children, you just don't know what you're doing. This is kind of facetious. I've been giving this internationally and locally and domestically, and because I've been a teacher of other people's children, and I have done everything that I put on here, not knowing better and learning how to reform myself as a teacher. And I was only doing what I had been done to me as a young child. And I think I needed to understand what God's word said about fathers. Do not provoke your children to wrath. And that is a form of abuse, actually, injury. So I want to highlight some of the things I've observed and learned of myself. So this is a thing that I don't think has been discussed too much. It's not anger. It's more severe than just simply making your child angry or mad. And I want to correct our language a little bit here. Mad dogs get mad. They foam at the mouth. A mad dog. But anger is emotion. It's not just all right, there's a difference in how we speak. So, sometimes we say to each other, "Are you mad at me?" Well, it's not accurate. I think anger is more accurate as to the pain that it really represents. Anger is an expression of something that has been injured, and mad is just an eruption of some kind, maybe momentarily. But I'm very specific about language, and if it's not precise enough, then we're not communicating, I think, clearly or accurately. So let's go on to some basics here and what we're talking about. In breaking down this passage, and some of you already know that I like to reason with God's word. I don't go to psychology, psychiatry, sociology, anthropology, okay, and all those specialists and experts in human science. I think God has already explained himself. And I want to understand by the scriptures, again, God's word, not man's word. So it says, fathers, this is interesting. We know that the proper position of the man, the father, the husband is the headship. So it's his responsibility that his home be operated and managed and execute the law for the father, the laws of the home, according to, because he's responsible for the whole. It's like a CEO, if you want to put it. They say the buck stops here. Well, when you're a leader, you are ultimately answerable for all the matter and management of that space, that place. So I want fathers to understand that the headship includes responsibility. So it's, and if I could speak to the mother, it's the heart of the home, and that's the proper position, place. And when you think about the home, fathers, I think I've mentioned this earlier, that the father represents the mind of God, as well as, and the mother represents, again, the love of God and the mind of God. There are two, tonight we're going to address authority with love. And so God is both. And so how do we properly use authority? We discussed that. And how do we properly express love with authority? And that's the home, the balance, the biblical balance of governing the home. But also, fathers are the muscular, the power, physical power as well. And so who can stand against the Father if he has the power of force, the power of not only physical strength, but who again can challenge that physical power that he has. And sometimes that is used for bullying because, again, who in the home, not the wife, not the children, can really defend themselves in any kind of violence. And I'm not talking just physical violence, but emotional or injuries or words even that are spoken in a manner that is violent. And so fathers, of course, are probably more liable to be forceful, to do injury of one kind or another, whether it's intended or inadvertently done. So there are two aspects to God's command to fathers in the home. And I think it is easily done by the man in the home to stir. It says to, again, call into action, arouse, or excite violent or extreme anger. And I want you to connect anger with injury. Again, being mad is like being insane, okay? Losing your mind. But anger here is referred to a expression of some hurt, deep, or shall we say surface, but that's what we're talking about. And so when we hear anger, we have expressions of anger from a child, it's something, they're complaining of something. Something is offensive. An offense is an injury of some kind. We take for granted that with their tender hearts, they're the most vulnerable to offense. Do you understand? You look at them wrong and they're ruined, okay? That's why we always smile, even when you're correcting them. It's that tone of voice, it's that words, the choice of words, because they go deep in those softened hearts. And we're going to find that children can harden their hearts in self-defense. So in the sense, so they stiffen themselves. They sort of build a defense and a hardness, which eventually lends to being cruel and unfeeling in the long term. When I'm thinking of provoking as well, I'm talking about not the occasional and certainly mistakes we do make inadvertently and maybe out of the lack of government of ourselves. I'm talking about something that is constant, that is habitual, that builds and builds over the years. And this is why we have to govern ourselves by God's power, not our own, our emotions and our thoughts and ourself. Also, we get anger too because we also are offended by our own children. That's possible too, isn't it? That's why you have to have that breastplate of righteousness I talk about, that if you're just before God and you are exercising your authority properly, you have to take I call them the fiery darts that will come at you in them, and we'll talk more about that. But we're talking about vehement, deep, and extreme hatred. How do you stir hatred? And I noticed that hatred of parents is so unnatural, but it can grow and deepen, and there's like contempt, and express itself in disrespect or dismissal, or even ignoring. And again, that's part of their defense of themselves. They hate parents because you cause them, or the parents cause them to hate themselves. That's really where it comes from. And what they feel, many times they want you to feel the same thing with words or argument and saying things that try to express the harm that has been done to their hearts. So we want to think about what is it that we do and how would we correct or restore the proper approach to all of us, to children in particular. They're not only the most vulnerable, they're the least able to defend themselves in any form, verbally or even physically. And so sometimes that's why they close up. But so, you ever have a child roll their eyes at you? Ooh, that's a bad one. They don't say anything, but their body language is very, again, offensive or very, very provoking too. But all of this, again, is what you are doing. Who is responsible for the relationship between parent and child? The parent is responsible for the relationship. It should never be broken. Nothing you do should destroy the bond, the natural bond a child and parent ought to have. I think God works that way. And how he deals with each of us is that he says, I'll never let you go, right? I will never forsake you. Okay, that bond has to be that affirmation of relationship. And that God never leaves or forsakes. And they should never understand that you could ever break or abandon or dismiss that relationship. So what we do is never make that relationship vulnerable and broken. That's to be preserved. I think today people are talking about Thanksgiving, right? The politics, and I'm not going to eat with them, or they're never going to see them again. But see, that's not the proper, shall we say, that's breaking a natural bond. And that is always to be restored in the home. But so the provoking is a form of abuse, okay, over time, because it results in true harm to the family unit and to, again, lasting relationships, lasting bond, I call it a natural bond, where there is always communion, always fellowship, always exchanging of thought and opinion and love. But the positive thing that God says to fathers is you're to bring them up, not to bring them down, okay? And sometimes if we're insecure within ourselves, we're going to foist on them our frustrations and our own inadequacies. And so we must, again, guard our own thoughts and feelings or emotions. That's an important thing to govern, is your emotions. That is flesh. Emotions are flesh. And if all people, the adults of the family, are to be masters and in good government and let God's Spirit restrain, direct us as to how we speak and what we say in our speech. But educate means to promote growth. And that means feeding the body, feeding the mind, and feeding the spirit. Spiritual growth, intellectual growth, as well as physical growth. You promote that. Bible says in Deuteronomy 6, day in and day out, 24/7. You're nurturing, you're feeding them in everything you do. Not just sit down and read the Bible, but what the Bible says, when you sit, when you rise, when you walk, you speak, when you eat, all of that. That you're in a, shall we say, a fishbowl. Your children are watching. They're listening. When you whisper, they especially listen, right? When you're quiet tone. But their ears, they learn by hearing, by the way. The first way people learn to speak, to do, especially to think, is through hearing. So promote growth and correct them with compassion. We never think of compassion or love or kindness with correction. But that's most important, that it is done with kindness. Kindness, not sharp, uh, punitive, even ridicule, but sarcasm. All of that is sharp and hurtful. And so, again, it's the quiet, still small voice, if you may, but that intimate tone, not alienating tones. And because it's all about them and not about us. And so we pick up offenses. We cannot pick up any offense that a child may throw at their parent. Why? Because they don't know what they're saying. They don't know what they're doing, right? They're ignorant. They need teaching. That's what they need. And so as we go forward now, I found 6 things that we're prone to do. I don't know if you can read it. I need to. That can't be enlarged, can it? Okay, apologies. But abusing parental authority. And again, you have the authority to shape, to affect their lives in a way nobody else has. And from birth until they're full adults. And let me explain what in manners, in your manners, a man told me recently, he said, when I grew up, I was never taught table manners, how to eat, okay? And I went to an elite school with wealthy children who've been to many, shall we say, grand occasions, and they knew how to eat. And they ridiculed him because he didn't know how to eat. And he never learned as a result. And so those things are important, even the teaching, the training, but your manners. I don't know, have you ever been to a restaurant? I'm sorry, I'm going to say something. Have you ever been to a Chinese restaurant and watched people eat? Okay, yeah. They're all villagers or something, but I avoid them if I can. But it is, there are things that we need to teach and we need to have them do, but they do what we do. It's generational, right? And then, of course, your conduct, your manner, not only, but how you act, how you approach things, how you respond to things, your conduct itself, the government of yourself, your language. As I said, if you curse, they're going to curse. How many children hear, "Oh my God," all the time, right? And that has become so popular and general that people, whether they know God or not, throw out that name so readily, so easy. It's sort of acceptable these days, but is using God's name in vain. Those little blips that we express, and because it's general, and then it's in God's name is misused and misapplied. So those things, and again, your opinions. This is important for you to hold. Is all of us have opinions, but opinions are not necessarily truth, or may not be true, and so opinion is a private idea, private thought. It's property, and I suggest that you don't give your opinion freely. And sometimes we say things so freely. Oh, you could be sitting in the car and the light is red, and you're sitting in the car and you see something. Oh, that person is not dressed well or something, or that's ugly. I don't like that. And they hear it, okay? And you're criticizing and finding fault with something that is just opinion. You see, it's just an opinion. And it's unjust to foist opinions publicly, especially if they're opinions that are contrary and negative opinions. Those things, again, are picked up. And they judge and they evaluate even your opinions. And so you keep your opinions to yourself for fear that, again, you're going to be challenged in your opinion. We'll talk about opinions in another way later. But let me say that they're offensive, they're sharp to the feeling, piercing, painful to hear. Okay? When you're hard and harsh about your, again, conduct, manners, opinions, they feel it. Okay? They know that it's unfair or unjust, or maybe they have a difference of opinion, but you have a judgment, and you make a judgment that is, again, offensive to hear, as well as causing distress in a person, even to yourself sometimes. Let me list the things here and then explain them. I went from the mildest offense to the most severe. Okay, I thought these went in an order of some kind. Impatience. And, this is common, though, more common than others. But when you look up the word impatience, uneasy, fretful, under suffering, not bearing pain with composure, not enduring evil without fretfulness, uneasiness and a desire or effort to get rid of the evil, not suffering quietly, hasty, eager, not enduring delay. Now, this is where I say to myself and to others, plan for slow. Your children are slow. They slow eating, they slow walking, they slow talking, they're slow in everything they do relative to you, right? So when you plan, for instance, if you have a doctor's appointment or you have to be someplace at a certain amount of time, you plan relative to the speed of your child, which is not speedy. And so when we think about, you're going to say, well, you're making me late. No, a child can't make you late. You didn't plan well. That's the point. And you're sitting there or standing there, tapping your feet because you just can't, and you're distressed and they're distressed. And they're distressed because they're causing you distress. All right? And so it just builds. And again, it's you who, again, didn't give account for what it would be to be on time for yourself. And the pushing, the fretfulness, again, is disturbing to a child when they think they are the cause for your pain. And that's what impatience on our part would enforce on, I think, the feelings of a child. And they're helpless. And do you ever notice that the faster you push, the slower they go? Okay, it's trauma. But the more you want them to hurry, they can't. They can't move. Okay, there's a paralysis sometimes that happens, but in all cases, you need to be again composed in everything you do, and this is on us. This is planning. Sometimes we give too much to do. We give assignments if we're homeschooling, and we think this should be done in 15 minutes. No, it's going to take them 45 minutes to do. You see, you have to allow, in fact, always give less, so that not more. One problem done well is better than 10 problems completely wrong, because they have a clock, they're on speed dial kind of a thing. Today, fast seems to be a important factor, is to that the faster you can speak, the faster you can read, the faster you can do anything, means you are probably superior in some form or manner. But it takes time to think and to do, especially when they're young, and especially when you expect perfection. So this is stressful to them as well. But I do ask you plan for slow. You give them what they can, less than what they can eat, not more. Okay, less than they can do, then not more. Again, they will increase over time, but we again expect too much too soon, too quickly. And this again causes them to distress themselves. And this could be a habit that we form and impose upon them. And so the fretfulness on our part, the uneasiness, again, it's better to be late than to cause offense, okay, or cancel, okay, because you're not considering really that your impatience is not causing offense that is a consistent harm and I think injury. So there you can be impatient all day long with them if you're not at ease and at peace within yourself in all occasions. So I want you to think about that. Precipitance is coming to a judgment too soon. You don't listen. You jump to conclusion. You already know what happened. Okay, you already know all about it, and you're quick to form an idea about the whole issue. In fact, it's very important that you don't label your child if you say you're lazy, you're disrespectful. That's a name, isn't it? That's a name. But you're acting, okay, lazy. The action is what you're talking about, not the person. And when you are, again, precipitate, you're already judging them as something, right? Rather than you are behaving this way or you are acting this way. That way it's not a personal. It's always the action that you can label, because other times they may not be lazy, you see. But when you attach to them something, a name, then that again is done. Okay, I'm stupid. Well, you could have done something stupid, but you're not stupid. I can remember having fights with my sister or somebody, because my brothers were too young. But we, called each other stupid. Okay, and my complaint to my father was, she called me stupid. And my father said, nobody in my family is stupid. Because if I'm stupid, I came from him, he's stupid. See, nobody comes from me, that's born of me is stupid. And anyone God made is not really stupid either, in a sense. So he took offense. So that did it. Okay, we're not going to call daddy stupid. Okay, but the idea is it's the precipitance, it's the judgment, ill-formed, uninformed, and this is where the ministry to your children is again to stop and to hear the heart, hear what's in their minds or on their mind. What do you think? What are you thinking here? Because the outward cannot tell you really what is the matter, but we always just look at appearances. A thing they may say or do, they may hit somebody or they may even strike you. But that is, again, not to react. You have to respond. There's a difference between reacting like a jerk, knee jerk, unthinking. A reflexive act is you're not thinking, but you have to respond, cause. What is causing the act? It's internal. This is a time of, again, hearing and listening without jumping to conclusions. Being rigid and stiff. I mean, it has to be exactly as exact, very strict, not easily to bend. You have to be flexible. Elastic is the word. When you deal with each other, and especially with children, you have to be elastic. Not so, people would call it strict, but so you have to have room for breathing, room for mistakes that may be made. Sometimes we don't give the proper instructions where, again, there's no room for error, no room for improvement, but what's unnecessary. And I think a lot of that comes from fear ourselves, that if it's not done this way, I won't be able to handle anything that is out of this rule or out of this way. But you have to, again, not so much be indulgent and allow, But again, I say be flexible, be elastic about your dealings with each other, but not when you're strict. Again, you're pretty much immovable, unmovable. No room for anything else to be done. But it's irrational. It's unnecessarily strict. It has to be this way or not. Then, of course, there's punishment involved. But it has to be reasonable, as we say. One of the things that, again, when we deal with obedience with children, they really judging, is this reasonable? Does it make sense? Okay. They need to, is there room for questions, or is it questionable? But that means that things aren't clear, that they are reasonable. They're beneficial to them. It's not simply because you have some desirable effect or to be done. But is it something that is positive? Is it going to make life easier for them, or is it going to make it more difficult? They know, and is again appropriate to the age and to the specific child. You know your children, you know them personally, you know them inside and out. And so, is this reasonable in this case, in this particular child for this age? This goes with every decision you make about them. And what's appropriate for one child may not be appropriate for another child. You have to grow with your children, and you have to, again, gauge their capabilities and as well how they think and what they're going to understand. So again, this absolutism, I call it absolutism. It's either A or F. You see, nothing in between. It has to be my way, or exactly as we say. But allow for flexibility in your working with your children or even teaching them. Not be so stiff. Unreasonable, immoderate, exorbitant, you're sort of hyperventilating. Now, what do we mean by that? You are exaggerating the act itself, making it larger than it really is. This is why we have to be calm about the whole thing. We have to be cool and calm to receive anything. They ought to be able to tell you anything, and you will not go to pieces. They will say, "Don't tell Dad," or "Don't tell Mom." She'll just, go crazy, or she'll fall apart. It cannot be that way. You have to, again, be open to, and this is being purely emotional, exaggerating, insisting you're already seeing your child going to jail, okay? Because this one thing is done, and you see something that is going to imagine things that will come out of this eventually that will not possibly, is not probable. Then this unreasonableness is basically just an emotional reaction, how you feel, how you hurt, how you imagine things can be as a result. Again, it's immoderate. It's something that you react to emotionally. Okay, the fear is always the case, and threatening. You're going to say, "If you do this, I'll never talk to you again." That's irrational, right? But the idea a parent would say, mother would say, "If you get hurt, I'll kill you." That's irrational, right? That's emotional, but it's warning or warning of something that is not probable to be done. Okay, I will take away this, or I will throw you out of the house, or something of that sense. It's terrorism. You have an axe hanging over their head all the time, and you've already judged an act before you have even dealt with it. It's laziness. It's, shall we say, warning of something so that, again, you don't have to do more than just threaten them. So that's empty. Sometimes they're very empty and you lose all respectability with them. And over, they don't hear you simply because it's something that that doesn't have effect upon them. There's disrespect because you can't follow through. And that's worse when disrespect sets in. You've already lost your not only authority, but your influence. Your influence. And so you want to maintain that positive respect, proper respect, and continue to have a shaping influence on them that is positive. But you're always, again, governing with threats. And this is a laziness. It's not teaching. Government is teaching. It's clear instructions. It's the whys. It's how good it will be if, and how what consequences would come if not. It's the contrast of the good and the evil that you're preventing, the good that you are supporting and the evil that you're preventing in them. That's not threatening, that's teaching. And it's not what you're going to do, it's what is consequentially going to follow if you follow this path. And that is truth. That's more true. It's not what you will do, it's what the good will do, and what this instruction will do, or if you follow this path, what that will do. And so we have the final one is irresolute. That means you can't make up your mind about anything, or you're always changing your mind about things. You don't have a set system of reasoning with them. First Chronicles 12:23 talks about Zebulun and how they were exact in battle, that their arrows went always consistently to the target. And that's the idea, is that you have a set, resolute, a convincing position concerning what you're doing and what you're asking them to do or commanding them to do. But it's the uncertainty that, and you keep changing your mind. That is frustrating, because if it's good one day and bad the next day, then there's instability in the house. There's again, lack of stability in them. They don't know which way you're going to go. The case in point, I had a young girl, 13 years old maybe. This was in Florida, I think. And the mother was complaining to me that their daughter one day had a huge emotional explosion and fit. And she had asked that she join the church youth group. And she had decided, the family had decided, I guess Father had decided, that Friday night, now we're going to set apart for family night. We won't have anything but togetherness Friday night. We will do things, stay together, have activities. And she wanted to go to youth meeting Fridays. And they said, no, you can't do that. And she just threw a fit. And she said this to the parent, the mother in particular. Why do you say no? Don't you know that in 3 months you're going to change your mind? She knew habitually how they are. They'll start something, and after a while they stop. They don't follow through. And this is consistent over the years of her childhood and even now. Don't you know that you're going to let me go in 3 months? Just let me go now. And it was the frustration and the anger that she was denied, again, friendships or fellowship with the youth. And if they would have kept the family night and assure her of that, that'd be different. But when something is good one day and then bad the next, what could they do? And this is a consistent pattern. And it just stirs in them, again, a resentment of you, of your decision making, and your uncertainty. And they think you don't know what you're doing, right? My parents don't know what they're doing. So I'm going to look somewhere else who can know what to do and what not to do. So those are the 6 things I think we can point to that over habitual what instances of these things can stir, I think, frustration and offenses in children. And the consequences really are, again, basically an anger. I think you've seen angry children, and they try to, again, question what you do. Let me see if I can get this going. So it's discouraging. They lose heart. It comes from the French word cœur, which means the heart. And you kind of, again, hurt the heart. And so it's depressing them, provoking him to wrath. Now, things that I'm going to be examples of opinions of how we speak and so forth. That's kind of small. Would berate them or belittle them. Sometimes that's even done in public. You never discipline in public or in front of anyone. Basically, it's a private correction, not in front of the siblings, but one-on-one. And we do that so often where at the moment something occurs, we want to take care of it right then and there, no matter where we are and who is present. But it needs to be, that's when they look small in front of everyone around them. And again, it depresses, it doesn't, was it bring them up? It's to raise them up, not to push them down to the level where they dismiss themselves and, again, are small in their own eyes, eventually in your eyes. But I've seen a lot of this in public, and it's not pretty. It's not pretty. But correction is personal. I think that's how God deals with us, is in a personal way. And also, it's how shall we say it? It gives them not only, doesn't tell them what is wrong or what the disobedience is, but how do you bring them back up? How do you give them alternative instead of, again, pushing them down, bring them up? What do you do next time? Okay, what is it that we did here? If this happens again, how would you do otherwise? So they have an exodus because they don't usually know how to think about anything they do. But you give them, how do I think? I have parents ask the same thing. This is what you say instead of this. This is how you do this instead of this way. They have to have a path to follow, not what not to do, but as well as how they can bring themselves up on a higher level of thinking and acting. Strip them of self-respect. And that can be done when, again, it's always the negative approach, where they see themselves as not as good as, not as capable as anyone else. And this comes when we compare, which is the following: compare themselves with other children, or compare themselves with a sibling, or with you even. When I was young, you ever say that? When I went to school, when I did this and when I did that. No, there's no comparison. If each child cannot be compared because he is one person, he is singular, there is no comparison to be made between two people. They're unique, and they are in a class of their own, I like to say. Okay? And so when you compare them with other children, that is very, very hurtful. And that is, again, lowering themselves in your eyes. And when they see that you do not see them as good as another child or as capable or doing as other children, then you have a low opinion of them. They see themselves as less than pleasing to you. and that even to yourself compared with you, whatever you may be. So this is harmful when you have favorites, and sometimes children compare favoritism with how much time you spend. I have a case where she has 4 children, very young, very close in age, and one child says, you don't love me like you love so and so. Well, she's 4 years old. The baby is, newborn. Well, the mother naturally spends most of her time needfully with the youngest one. But she doesn't understand that this child needs her time. And then, of course, there's less time for her. That's how she sees it. And it's how she feels. It's not so much what she sees. So that's why a feeling of being loved when there is no time together is very important. That begins at the youngest of ages. Sometimes when you have the first child, they get 100% of your time. The second one comes along, and the child thinks that now I got half of your time. Kind of the love is divided, is shared. They can't see it that way. That your heart has a place for every child, and everyone. There is no favoritism, but they have to sense that. And so a lot of things need to consider how a child thinks about your relationship with each of your children. Every child has a different relationship with a parent, right? If you have grown up with siblings, there's 4 in my family, and we would tell stories about our mom and dad. And we each would have a different way of explaining their relationship. And we don't know, but it's very personal, singular. And that's important, that individual stories to tell, individual kind of events you had together, conversations you have with each other, and things that were done with each child. But so, people talk about criticism, and I heard a parent say, well, I criticize them so they can learn, so I can help them. But criticism is looking for a fault. So I want to help to improve them by telling them what their faults are. I don't think that's the way you do it, because that's all they hear is what's wrong. You know what's wrong with you? You ever hear that one? I'll tell you what's wrong with you. Or do you say, you need to do this? You ever say that? Or do you ever say, I need you to do this? I've heard that a lot. No. You see, it's that, again, approach where they're not meeting requirements. I asked the parent, did you ever tell your son what good he has done? If he does any good. Now, he may be the naughty one in this family, but have you ever, when he did something that was positive, did you ever take note of it? But most of the time we're saying what he's doing wrong. And it's critical thinking is looking for faults in anything. We don't want to teach critical thinking in school. We want to teach analytical thinking. That's the difference. What makes something work is analytical. What you don't like about something, what is wrong with something, if there is anything, but is critical thinking. And it's not, it's self-judgment. Opinion again. So be careful about critics. You have food critics, right? Because you have to please somebody so that you can get approved. And if they find a fault, a flaw, then they don't measure up. So be careful about criticism. That's not what we want to do. We want to see what's underneath this way, this manner, this speech, this attitude. Don't say you got a bad attitude. No, what's underneath all of that? Okay, there's a complaint somewhere. You've got a complaint. What is it? And they'll tell you if you ask them. That's good. I want to know what's on your mind. What's the reason for this? That's analytical rather than you again, it's not the outward, it's what's causing it, and that's resolving it. And that's healing. Or if you see something that is at fault, you show them again what is better than what they're doing. But it's lifting up in the correction, not pushing down where they're deflated, discouraged. Their heart is depressed. Now, one of the things that we need to take time to do is to listen. To listen. We do all the talking, don't we? We tell them everything we know. We throw them the whole bale of hay. What's on our minds? What's on their mind? You have to be one to listen to their heart, to their thoughts. They need not to be afraid to tell you what's on their heart and what's on their mind. And it could be all imaginations. It could be full of, shall we say, false interpretation of things. But that's where you can make things right. Turn them, again, to the right way of thinking. So it takes time to have conversations, to have a talk, so they can tell you and not be afraid to tell you. But a lot of the time, we're quick at correcting. We're quick to criticize, or again, to finish the event instead of taking time. If you have 5 children, that could be hard, but this is what God gave you for, to listen. Too many mothers, I think, don't have the time to listen because they're working. They're not home. Okay, that's what's happened. So they have counselors at school. They have youth pastors. They have, friends, peers to listen. And what can they learn? What can they get from them except really discouragement? Really not something that a parent can only do for them. They're missing you. They're really missing you. For you to listen, to hear them, their heart, as it were, their minds, and not be afraid to tell you. That's important. For fear that you're going to, again, get angry or dislike them, disapprove of them. Using cruel words and actions. That's important. I remember a teacher I had in a school. She's joking, but it's no joke when you tell a student, I'm going to take these scissors and cut your lips because you talk too much. Now, who's going to laugh at that? She took it seriously. Why would you do that? It's, but again, it's cruel. You don't talk to a child or anyone that way. But, it's probably the way she was brought up. Those threats, that they get at home, I'm going to lock you up. I'm going to put you in handcuffs. I have a parent who did put their son in handcuffs because he was so active and all. And he's borne that pain and that disassociation with that son. He's 20 years old now, but he's emotionally really wounded, okay? There has to be healing in that part. But how does he feel? Does he or she feel that he is cared for and loved? I have a daughter in another family who said out loud, and she's very blunt, she says, nobody in this house cares for me. She's overlooked, you see. That's a real feeling. No child should feel that way if we can help it, but nobody in this house cares for me. She's kind of overlooked or not, doesn't feel it. See, it's not true, we care for you, but does she feel it? That's the different thing. There has to be affirmation that they're loved. And that's every day. Speak it. Give it. Give affection. Speak affectionately. Assurance. But affirm that on a regular basis. And some families don't do that. It's foreign to some families, absolutely. I think it's generational, perhaps in some. And sometimes we must become the adult in the family or the parents you never had, you see. Because you have experienced the love of God, and He affirms in His Word that He is love and that He's a giver. He gives love. He shows love. And so we need to know how to do that for each child before they end the day, when they get up in the morning. This, positive, affirming, wishing them well, blessing them. That's how they feel, you see. They don't hear it. It's not shown. They're not, again, talked to or given a blessing. Another thing that is discouraging and hurts them is that you argue with them, you war with them, and you fight with them. Your conversations is just a battle, disagreement, criticism, and self-defense, or offending and defending, back and forth, back and forth. And this is not improper conversations with your children. You can't ever win an argument with your child, only because they can't reason at your level. So they always win if you when they argue, you argue at their level, they always win because it's irrational, in a sense. So arguing and in debate, in trying to win an argument, not so. That is, again, you lower yourself in their eyes when you come down to their manner of thinking and reasoning. Or you outwit them and you out-argue them, and then what? What victory is that if you win an argument, you see? You don't war with your spouses, you don't war with your children. The house is not a war zone, you see. And you have discussion. You discuss, you exchange ideas, you listen, but not fight with your children. So it's your approach. Really, it's your approach. Respect yourself first. Respect the authority God gave you and use it wisely. Use it discreetly, not as an arm and hammer kind of a thing. And abuse that authority where you can lose it as well. The best thing that heals is when you say, I've been wrong. And I've had parents humble themselves because we did this. And in fact, I had a father just yesterday. He said to me, I've been wrong. And I told my son I was wrong because mother thought one way and I thought another way, and we weren't together. And now I understand I was wrong to do that, and now we are together. And so I've taken all the computers away. And now so I used to go to father for, approval, because he approved of the computers, them gaming and whatever it was that they were doing besides Instagram now. I don't know all this. I can't keep up. Facebook, okay. Is it X now instead of Twitter? It used to be Twitter, the bird. And, and it was, again, debilitating in the house. It was debilitating in many different ways. And so, again, they always gravitated to father because he approved. And he realized that in other areas he had been wrong. And God had revealed to him, and he humbled himself, told his wife that he apologized to her. And the process is now they won in agreement, and the children have no one to divide the home, divide and conquer. That's how the devil comes into your house. And so he took all the computers away. Now they have no one to get on their side, so to speak. And it's healthy. It's healing in the home. There's respect now for both parents, and there's that unity that should be there. And he apologized. Because God had convicted him, not because he was cajoled to do that or he argued with his wife, because God brought it before him. God brought it to him. And that's important to be open to that humility and correct or to admit your error with your children. And we make mistakes all the time. And I'm sorry, that was my fault. You were right, I was wrong. That's okay. That's exactly all right. So, and there, pride is sometimes in the way where we try to excuse ourselves. And that's what we're teaching our children, is how to excuse themselves when they are in error. That's where the argument comes. In discipline, when we think of discipline, we always think of punishment. Discipline starts with teaching. Okay, it's really, if you look at the definition of discipline, it's like discipling. Jesus taught his disciples. I think he gave an oral, I guess not an oral test, but at the Last Supper, Philip, he said, I must go to my Father. And he was telling his disciples, I must leave, I must go back to the Father. And Philip said one of those questions, show us the Father. And I've been with you 3 years. You've walked and talked with me and lived among me, and you still haven't seen the Father, you see. But that's what he was showing them all along, that he was God, the Son of God. Okay, he was a little dense. He finally got it. But, slow to learn, of course. But they didn't realize, in truth, who he was until the end, and of course the resurrection. But instruction, and still, that's the difficult part, is the instruction for understanding. And I like the disciples because they all were slow to take in what they were witnessing until the Holy Spirit came into their life and revealed what they had seen and realized. But it's to inform the mind. It's not giving orders. It's to inform the mind. Jesus illustrated, Jesus taught, he gave examples over and over again, seeing and showing and seeing at the same time for them. To again be systematic in your teaching, that is consistent, orderly, line upon line, the Bible says, precept upon precept. You have something to tell them. You have something to show them. You want to do something with them. You want to teach them how to do something, how to think about something. It doesn't have to be every day. The liberty of home education, I don't call it homeschooling. Home education is as you can, as God gives it to you, you teach it. Whatever God gives you, you teach it. And God will give you food to feed. It could be, again, it's that liberty that we have for biblical instruction from God through you. And then there's a level of correction. And correction, as we said before, is to bring back from wrong. They've veered away. They've strayed away like the little lamb or sheep that sort of wanders away. And to correct means bring them back to the right path. Redirect them, bring them back to you, for one thing. When there's disobedience, they have far away from you. They've sort of removed themselves from your authority, removed themselves from your eyes and your oversight. And so how do you bring them back? Reconciliation. And of course, the final thing is chastisement. That's the final. And, there's a lot of space between teaching and then punishment, or and we quick to punish, quick consequences. It doesn't have to be immediate. Sometimes you learn that this thing will repeat itself, right? It's going to happen again. You don't have to jump every time there is a broken dish, okay, so to speak. You kind of sweep it up and throw the dish away. But if there are things that's habitual, okay, that doesn't get corrected on its own through instruction, through all those, then we have to come to a point where, okay, there's a consequence. I mean, a pain. It has to be something painful, not necessarily physical. It can be a denial of a privilege or losing of something, but to bring it back to your will. Obedience is putting their will under your will. Just as Jesus said, not my will be thine, but not my will, but thine be done. That's proper restoration. The struggle of their will against God's will. And so to restrain means, how are you going to hold them back? Okay, what will hold them back? And so you have to have the wisdom to do. It's not always physical, especially when they're I would say 9, 10. The physical is really not necessary if you do it correctly with other kinds of consequences. But the idea is to bring back not only them to under your care and under your authority, and to subordinate themselves, is also to bring back the idea that they respect you. You know, when we give consequences, you could lose respect, but it has to be just. It has to be just. And that's why you have to think about it before you execute. I mean, literally execute, in some cases, a consequence. You have to think it through. Mom and dad have to sit down and have a powwow, many times prayer time. It depends upon the severity of the activity or the action involved, and think it through calmly and without, again, upset. So the discipline begins with instruction, and then you watch, and then you observe, okay, and you talk. You talk. Let's see. I think yeah, that's it. Any questions? Is anything not clear? Maybe you've never done any of these, right? Familiar? Okay. But again, provoking. And what I witness again is the hatred they grow towards, or the resentment they grow, the contempt they have, disrespect, that this can mount up to a point when they're 13, right about that time when they're a bit taller. They're maybe taller than you. They have a little muscle. They feel a little bit more independent on their own. Then you're going to have, again, rebellion. I say resistance, a violent resistance in a sense, where there is that anger that has come over time and built up. I would say that this is where the separation happens. In fact, people say that this separation is natural. Well, natural, humanly natural, but it is not the way God created the family to be, okay? And they really learn to hate themselves. When they hate themselves, it's when they say things such as, I wish I were never born, because this is how they feel. This is what they received. Or I didn't, things like, I wish I were dead, I'm not good enough. All of these things it's what's communicated through these through the treatment that or mistreatment that they receive. So we want to be mindful that the responsibility of your relationship with your children is on you, not them. They're not responsible for your happiness or your reputation or any of that. They're under you, subordinate to you. You are, again, responsible for how they feel and how you, again, manage your own authority. Okay. Okay, authority with love. The Bible tells me that God is supreme, isn't he? Supreme authority? There's no higher authority. The Bible also tells me that God is love. How can he be both? But he is both. And so it's not, authority isn't, as we were taught or seem to think, that something that is so overpowering and sovereign, and he is omnipotent for sure. But somehow we always think of authority as something negative, something punishing, something that is overpowering ourselves. So, but God says God is love. And those two go together. Authority without love, as we know, is abuse. Love without authority is also an abuse, in a sense. So there's that balance that God has within this idea of authority with love. When the Bible tells me that in God's presence is fullness of joy. And when I think about being with God, it's that heavenly place called home. We call home, our future eternal home is heaven. Jesus said, "In my Father's house are many mansions. And if I were not so, I would have told you, I go to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again, so that what? And receive you unto myself, that where I am, there ye may be also." It occurred to me that home is heaven, or heaven is home, where God is. That's where God is. And I kind of sort of thought, well, maybe that the place closest to heaven on earth ought to be our homes, right? And heaven is where God is. So where is God in the home? It ought to be in the parents, you see. How are they going to know about God's authority and God's love, except their parents be Christians and believers? Do you understand? So that is how they first are introduced to God. And to obey you is synonymous with obeying God, provided that you yourself are obedient to God in parenting, in the manner you have with your children, in the relationship you have with your children. It's the closest thing to, again, God's way, God's government of you and me. And so this idea of home being where God is, you're introducing them to God by your love and your authority. And the mind of God, again, is the authority, is the law of the home, the rules of the home. A law is really a rule of action. How do you act in this place? How do you act in the home? How are we to act as children? How are we to act as a father or as a mother? But that's the law. God has a law for fathers. God has a law for mothers. God has a law for children. Everything he creates has a law. And therefore, we need to learn what those laws are for each under God. And so when we think about four things, okay, four things I think we can use to show God's love in the home with authority. I think this is 1 Peter 4:8, yes. And you and I know the Bible says that love covers a multitude of sins. Love covers a multitude of sins. Have you known what that verse means? Okay. When you cover something, you don't see it, right? You don't see it. It's gone. It's as if it wasn't there. And love forgives without, all right? And how does love behave? It's as if it never happened. When God says he doesn't remember our sins, I never thought God could forget anything. But he says your sins are covered by, first of all, Christ's blood and our salvation through his blood. But your children are going to offend. They will provoke. They will stir you to wrath, in a sense. Not that you will hate yourself. Maybe you do because you feel like you're not a good parent. They may cause you to feel that even, I mean, by their behavior or by their actions and words. But God says that love covers, hides the offenses. It's as if it never happened. That's what forgiveness is. You hear the idea that forgive. Should I open the door? Forgive and forget, they go together, don't they? And when you forget something, it's as if it never happened. And God says on the cross, Christ said on the cross, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And forgiveness comes to those who are ignorant of the law. Stephen, before he was stoned, or while he was being stoned, he said, Father, don't charge them with this. They don't know what they do. And your children, many times, as they are young, they don't know what they're saying. They don't know what they're doing. They're ignorant. They are ignorant. They were born to you, but they need to be born again. And that's the point of the home, is to deal with the savage in your house, okay? They're born pretty wild, okay? Some say wild children. Well, we're all wild before we're born again. And so your intent is to bring them up, okay, so that they meet Christ, they know Christ, they receive Christ. And through, again, how you use your authority. But you need to forgive your children all day long, every day, 7 days a week, right? 365 days a year, all right? That's the kind of covering that we need. And they're going to offend, they're going to shame you, they're going to embarrass you. I've seen a lot of embarrassing parents at restaurants. I saw a lot of embarrassed parents at grocery stores, right? In public, in parking lots. They will say cruel things to you. They will hurt you with their words. Some children hit their parents. I've seen that too. And God says, forgive them, for they don't know what they do. And that's that forgiveness. Do you not hold grudges? You can't say, well, remember when you were 5 years old, you did this to me? You never remember. You have amnesia, okay? When you get dementia, that's a blessing, in a sense. But the forgetting part, and it's not bringing it back up again, And it's condemning because it's not forgiven. But we have to have that divine love that forgives and remove it from as far as the east is from the west, that it never happened. I think, I've had people ask for forgiveness. I said it was forgiven when it happened, right? You don't have to ask. So they're not going to ask for forgiveness. They don't know. And you forgive anyway, you see, as if it never happened. That's why a mother's love is the heart of God, where you can hurt your mother, and she'll always be mother, okay? The prodigal son left his father, but his father never left him, always looking for his return. And God never mentions, you know the story of Abraham. And, his mistake was he listened to his wife, right? But, he's in Hebrews 11, God remembers his faith. All the rest is gone. No, Abraham, Noah, Jacob, they were characters, weren't they? Terrible, right? But they're in that catalog of faith, and all the rest is not mentioned. It's gone, you see. And that's what we see. We see their faith. We see the good, and everything else is gone, okay? And that's forgiveness. So all of that. And until they come under God, fully under God, that's your purpose. Raise them up for the Lord. Bring them up. Educate them so they govern by God and no longer by you. We call that consent to the government of God, that self-government. And you have to do it first, though. I remember a mother's high school age son said, if I have to sit around this kitchen table one more year, I'm going to die. I want to go to high school. Okay, I want to join the swimming team. My friends are there. They say we're going to have a lot of fun. Okay, I want to be with my friends. And so the mother came to him, when he was complaining, 16-year-old, he said, I'd rather suffer your displeasure than God's displeasure. And that settles it, you see. That's the idea that you're under God. You're not under your child, you see. He doesn't determine what you do, or she doesn't determine how you are, but you're under God. And when they see that God is your supreme ruler, okay, they can't argue. Can they argue? Of course, he's in a Christian home, but see, all that is resolved. They will have their struggles. And so long as you don't struggle with them, their struggle is with God, not with you. And so there's wisdom in this idea that they know, again, that you have such love that you pick up no offense. You don't pick up the offense. And too often we do. So consider that forgiveness, especially with your children. Then it says, for I am persuaded, when it comes to God's love, that nothing's going to separate me from God's love. There's nothing I will do or say from this time forward, as I am in Christ, that nothing can come between me and God's love. Do they have that assurance? There's nothing that can separate your love from them. Now, their love may be separated from you. I mean, they may take their love or say or act as if, but your love will never forsake them. And this is the assurance we have as believers, as the child of God. And if they have that confidence, then you have that relationship that is, again, settled. It's settled. But too many of us are so proud that when we dislike something or someone or something done, that we stop giving affection. We sort of separate ourselves from them. But the separation, if it comes, it won't be because of you separating. It's because they've decided to. And that's true with God, too. God loves his enemies. Sometimes we can't love those that hate us, but God loves those that hate him. And so that's the degree, the depth of that love you hold for each child. They have to know it. Paul was persuaded. And this is their stability, their emotional security from babyhood on up. And that is a certainty that you welcome them, no matter what they do, what they say. Okay. So that's an assurance that we have. Can we give that to your daughter, your son? And then there is love. What does love do? Love gives. Love gives. It gives without any strings attached. It's not, you owe me because I sacrificed for you. Have you been told that? Why? We gave up our lives, our pleasures, our vacations for your education or for you, so you could have this. And again, you cause them to say, you owe me. Okay, you're obligated to me. It's very Oriental, that kind of thinking, in a sense, you take care of us because we took care of you, kind of a thing. And you're obligated. That's duty. That's your duty. But God gives freely. God gives freely without anything qualifying it. We sometimes like to bribe children, don't we? Give you $1 for every A you get. Of course, $1 is not worth anything today, but it used to be when I was growing up. I never got $1 for an A. But the idea is, again, sort of seduce them into obedience with some kind of gain from it, but give freely without anything attached whatsoever. And also, love gives good gifts. That's one thing parents get trapped up in. Good gifts. And if a child asks for a scorpion, Jesus said, would you give him a scorpion? This is when you have to say no. Have to say no. When God says no to you, how do you feel? Does he still love you? Of course. See, you say, I love you too much to say yes to what you wish for. And you're not Santa Claus, all right, to give their wishes. But they have to understand when you say no, it's out of love as much as when you say yes. It's, and no means I love you as well as yes when you say yes. So, they would say, well, if you loved me, you would do this. No, if I loved you, I wouldn't do this. I wouldn't give you this. Telephones are one of those things, are scorpion. To me, a telephone is scorpion. What's a 2-year-old need a telephone for? Okay, we know the damage that can be done nowadays, right? We have a whole generation raised up with earplugs or whatever those things are. Buds, not earplugs. Buds, right? They call them earbuds? Okay. And it's damaging, right? Neurologically as well as other ways. So, how to give good gifts? Is it good? What is good? Is it going to promote? Is it going to grow them spiritually, physically, and morally or spiritually? Or is it going to debilitate? Is it going to corrupt? This is why you are in charge. Make sure that they have good food and good things and good gifts. It promotes growth and life. Evil is what destroys and corrupts and does damage to body, soul, and spirit, or mind and spirit. So you're the like God. They ask for, again, bread, you give them a stone. Of course not. And finally, the Father chastens. The Father that loves his Son chastens. Kind of like to use the illustration of the story of the shepherd who has one sheep that likes to wander. In fact, sheep by nature wander. That's why you need a shepherd. That's why you've ever seen dogs that herd sheep? They keep them in line. They keep in the herd, the flock, not herd, flock. And so the story goes that there's one particular lamb or sheep that just wanders off and goes up those hills to see what's on the other side. So the shepherd goes after him and takes that walk, follows the sheep, picks him up and brings him back. And this sheep, of course, is aware when the shepherd is not watching, and so just does it again and several times until it's a habit. And he doesn't know that there are wolves out there, that he could fall off a cliff or something. He gets stuck in some brambles and die. He's not aware of that. He needs to be watched. He needs to be with the rest of the flock. And so this time, after maybe several times, he takes the sheep and takes a leg and he breaks it. And then he puts ointment and wraps it up. Now the sheep can't walk. Well, I'll take care of him, right? Can't walk. Is he going to leave him there to die? No. He carries him until the leg heals. Okay? And it's take weeks, maybe a couple of weeks, maybe a month. And then he takes the bandages off. And he puts the lamb down. And that lamb attaches itself to the leg of that shepherd, knowing in the chastening there's care, there's compassion, there's closeness, not abandonment. And he's sticking by that leg all the way. And that's maybe the illustration of what chastening ought to do. It brings them closer to you. It doesn't throw them out. do we say, go sit in the corner? This timeout business is not working, okay? It's not time out. Time in, that means I want to be with you more. I want your company. I want you to come sit next to me. I want you to go where I go. I want you to have coffee with me or something. Are you going to do it with me? I'm going to do it with you. It's bringing them closer. It's not go to your bedroom. I don't want to see your face. Or get out of here. We've said that. Some have said that. I had a story, true story of a mother who had to leave, maybe she works, and gave chores to her daughter to do while she's gone. And of course, comes home, the chore's not done, no vacuuming, no dusting. And that's what happens when she's not home, okay? She's toying around, okay, sitting around. And so the last time, I guess one time, she said, just go to your room. I don't want to talk to you. I'm tired. And so I think I made a presentation about obedience and disobedience. So she took it to heart, and the next time it happened, something similar, she said, you're coming with me. They're going to go to the store. She's got to do shopping. So she's going to the store. They're both kind of unhappy with each other in the car. You can imagine. Okay. Well, and the mother realizes that she's got to do something to make it right. She's been wrong. They get out of the car and they start walking toward the store. And she says, she reached over and took her daughter's hand. Just took her hand. And the daughter wrapped her arms around the mother's mother. I love you. Okay? That's all she needed. She'd missed her mother, right? Day in and day out. And she reconciled. See, it was like God reconciled with us, right? She made the first move, okay, and restored that bond that the daughter was missing. And that's all she needed was a show of love, assurance that it wasn't just chores. She wasn't raised to vacuum, okay? She wasn't raised to do the work that mother once done, but that she wanted a daughter like her. And so this chastening is correction, but in the right way, and where relationships are stronger than before. I think our relationship with God is stronger than before when He chastens us, isn't it? It's like the prodigal son, I'll never leave again. Sometimes it takes more than once, right? Some of us go astray more than once. Habits get picked up again until we finally are convinced that I need to be with God more, not less. So these 4 things maybe are practical enough to exercise and display authority with love, because God is both. And in the home, you have both. And it's God in you, so they can see God in you. And how many, maybe young people, when they leave home, they leave God? You take them to church, get in the car, we're going to church, Sunday, Wednesday, Saturday, we're always in church. But the church is not where God is. It begins here, right, with you. That example, shall we say. And they're not perfect, they know they're not perfect, but how do you handle that imperfection? Is it, again, oppressive? Is it critical? Is it all those things we talked about before? Are you impatient with them? They have to get it right the first time. Can't you do anything right? All of this business. Let me show you. Let me show you how easy it can be done if you do it this way. Let me do it with you. Do it with them until they have formed more good habits, if you will. But it starts with, again, teaching. Caring enough to explain and to show them yourself. Is this helpful? Helpful? Yeah. I wasn't raised this way. We never talked. Yeah. But God taught me, okay, through teaching other people's children, okay, and also examining what I know about God, okay. So hopefully it's practical, and just sometimes we don't know what it is that we're not doing and what it is that we are doing, you see. And so if we put words to it, then we can have wonderful grandchildren. How about that? Okay. Well, thank you. No questions?
Okay, so I may have a question on the debate, maybe side of your discussion. So yes, there's discussion, there's debate. Where, so where do you put the limit? Is it in the emotion? Is it in the tone? Is it just in the behavior? The content? Can you tell me more on that?
All of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's that calm spirit in you that calms them down, that assures you they're safe. Are they safe here? Or am I going to really get it? He's going to kill me. I mean, it's not kill them spiritually, emotionally, not kill them physically. It hurts. So it's really that gently. I know it's hard. You want to shout. One of my fathers said, not my fathers, but I only have one father. I mean, a parent I knew says, I got to show my power. I got to be loud, right? I got to fill the room with anger. Then they'll be afraid of me. Oh yeah, they'll be afraid of you, but it hurts. It's just like thunder, lightning, piercing. And so it's coming, take them aside. Okay, let's talk. Tell me. Okay. But it's easy for me because they're not my children. You have to be impersonal and personal at the same time. Some of you are old enough to be my children, so I can talk to you. But it's really, you have to be calm. You have to be cool about the whole thing, not hot and ready to pounce, okay? So you can tell them and say to them that was wrong to do or wrong to say, okay, but not in a big, loud, boisterous, angry voice, right? And let their conscience, I like to appeal to their conscience. I ask them questions. Here's an example, really simple example. I think maybe I've given this before. Principal I know walks through the yard. It's in the country, there are trees around, and he looks up in one tree, and there's a boy up in a tree when he's supposed to be in class. And he said, this principal says, hi, friend, or fella, whatever his name was. He says, what's the rule? When the boy told him the rule. And he said, are you obeying the rule? He has to say, I didn't obey the rule. Your child has to say, I didn't do it, or I did do it. But the confession has to come from them, not you accusing. So you never accuse. You have them, but through conversation. And he didn't shake the tree down. He didn't pull him down. And he could have been justified. But even his conscience told him, he judged his wrongdoing. That to me is more corrective than I'm gonna suspend you. Okay, you see what I'm saying? Okay, so especially if they're older, you can even do it to a 6-year-old, and I've done that, and they're crying before I even ask a question. They know they did wrong. Okay, especially I'm the principal. What can you do? Your principal's office. Okay, but they sense it already, but they just don't want to get killed. Okay, question? Yeah, that's good. Okay, do it in French. Sounds more romantic. Mon cœur. Okay, anything else? Okay, that's a good question.
Maybe I'll ask. So I guess in general, how do you get them to do what you want them to do in an area where maybe they have consistently said no or failed to?
Okay,
because you said to be patient, but
there is a relationship. It's based on a relationship, right. Okay? And so if there's distance to begin with, then there's either going to be willful ignorance, willfully ignoring you, or dismissing what you have to say. So you have to develop a relationship where you can, depend their age, but let's talk, okay? Art, I want to hear what you have to say about this. Maybe you are unreasonable. You see, it's not that wrong or right, but let's resolve this because there is something wrong here. Okay, have I done something that has hurt you? Did I say something? Sometimes they're holding a grudge against you because you did something when they were 5 years old, or so and so did something, or maybe it didn't even happen with you. They're just bothered and struggling with something. You need to analyze what's underneath all that. But they have to trust you so that you're not going to pounce and you're not going to say, oh no, you shouldn't think that. They do think that. That's the problem. You can't say you don't think that way, but they are thinking that way. What are we going to do about that? Okay. And you can just listen and not have a solution, but you want them to speak from their heart without fear. So if they don't hear you, there's a choice involved. They're choosing not to hear you or dismissing you or ignoring you. So it's not that what they're doing, it's what's our relationship. What kind of relationship do we have? And if you've erred and not been as close as you want to be, that can be corrected too. Okay? Question? I mean, you have adult children. That could be a problem. Yeah. So you can't correct them. They have to come to it. But I think there needs to be something that is blocking or it's, they're just rebelling against God, maybe. I don't know. But that point, when they're 20 and over, you just pray. You can't impose anything after they're 20. No, 20 is how long God gives parents to raise them up. And then they should be paying rent. Not daughters as much as sons. Yeah. So they start getting a job at age 14. How old is your son? 13. One more year. Chick-fil-A or something like that, okay? Sweep floors, clean toilets. Start at the bottom. Save their money, and then move out in 20. 6 years. You got 6 years. I told a 10-year-old boy once, I said, 10 years you're going to have to pay rent. 10 years old, that scared him to death. But a lot happens between 10 and 20, He was...
We told my older one, I say, after 18 years old, you need to move out or just like pay rent for us.
20 is good. 18 is the law, okay, because they can go to the army. But 20, God says 20 and over will die in this wilderness because they're responsible to God. But make sure they can account to God. You have to raise them. Sometimes they're not ready to answer to God yet or pay rent. But the man has to be able to leave father and mothers, you see, and be independent before he marries. Okay, so he pay his own way. No student loans. Okay? Okay? Absolutely. Speaking of the man, all this education has been to destroy manhood, not womanhood. Using the woman to destroy manhood, but it's manhood. That's how Adam got destroyed. Satan used the woman. Okay? He lost his position. So thank God we have an opportunity to restore ourselves as families. And that's God's mercy, but it's wonderful. Let me change the subject here. That's okay. All right. I don't want to record it. Okay. Anything else?
I have very young kids, but I have some troubles disciplining them because I asked a sister and she told me a way to discipline very specifically. She said if she intentively disobeying you, you need to discipline them. So that way is I will warn my kid that if you don't obey, you hit it on. And then yeah, there was one day she was doing something quite dangerous. Well, she was playing with a dangerous toy, and me and the teacher and the other sister, we were all telling her to stop, but she didn't stop. And I have to tell. She was looking at me like I don't want to do it now. So yeah, I was like, you need to come off now, and she refused to do that. But and then I say, okay, you have to come to the room with me.
Okay.
As
Yeah.
it was a long time, an hour or something, because she refused to come. And it's not quite as hurtful as it is, but then I hugged her so that I told her that I need to tell her that you should obey when I say it the first time. Yeah, well, I thought I did it correctly, but then I find out someday she was actually yesterday she was with her toy, and she said to her toy, you need to obey, and she hit the oh wow, I was like because before I thought I did it really correctly, or I tried my best to discipline her, because there should be discipline, right?
Well, discipline starts, yeah, well, as I said, it starts with teaching and training, and children need order,
Yeah.
okay, regular, they have to live with order, and it looks like she's the firstborn, right? And when she was the only child, she could do whatever she wanted. You see? She's ruling. She's the ruling here. And you haven't taught her obedience, because and then when the new baby comes, right? There's problems. So you see, she shouldn't do that. Take somebody else's property, okay? But she's allowed to at home, okay? So the training process is, when she said no to you in front of everybody, she shamed you. She shamed you in public. You don't say you need to. She doesn't think she needs to. You think I need to. But the need word, I don't know where that came from. I was never told in Chinese I needed to do anything. Just do it, right? You give an order, you don't say you need to. They don't think that, and they don't understand what's bad or dangerous. Everything they do is good. They're innocent. She's innocent. She doesn't know she's bad. Okay, but you haven't trained her. So at home, does she go into your purse? Does she go into every place in the house she wants to? Yeah, she shouldn't do that. Okay, when you say no, so if you were out there in the yard and she said no to you and something dangerous happened, I would go pick her up, take her away. Okay, take her to the car maybe, but not to another room, or privately, or you hold on to her and don't let her off your lap until you go home, and then but you don't do it in front of everybody. Okay, and you don't hit immediately the first time. If she doesn't do it, okay, you gotta find the time to do it. If I say to your 2-year-old son, because he's talking and walking now, pick up your toy and put it in the box, okay, but you go with him and do it, okay, you do it with him, okay, just pick up and this is your box, your toy, okay, and you do it with him habitually until he can do it. You can tell him to do it, he does it. But a habit, you form a habit. You have to be available. When you send them to school, you're not available. This is home training, not school training, not public training. And relatives, sisters, grandmas mean well. But your relationship with your children is your relationship. They don't have a relationship with your children, okay? Patience, that's what I'm talking about, okay? You can't get angry because they won't do it right. You have to be patient, but you have to do it with her on a regular basis until she doesn't do anything else. And you're stronger than she is. She's going to wriggle her way out, alrighty? And you got to say, no, not yours, okay? She needs to give it back to that lady, but don't make her do it here. Do you understand? At home, there's property. This is daddy's, not yours. And you don't just let her go pick up your, I've seen fathers, let their child just take their phones. You're not teach property very easily. But no means no, and you just remove it. And she's going to cry and kick, and you need to let her cry and kick. Because the cry is a weapon's child. It's child's weapon. It's a weapon. And they'll cry till they're 10. I mean, they'll pretend to cry, no tears. But that's all they know, you see. And their anger also is manipulative too. You gotta understand how to read her, okay? See, this is called a wild child. Don't put handcuffs, but you don't train her, okay? At home first. Everything she does in public comes from home. So, okay? Think about it. You and your husband, think about it, okay? You both have to agree to how you're going to handle it's not just words, it's, you just the act, okay? Spanking is not the cure for this, it's the heart, it's obedience. Do you understand? It's the will too. So, she loves the attention.
So yeah, I have so where does this compassion come from? Because me naturally will come with judgment. Because I was raised by judgment, so I know that I remember when Peter betrayed Jesus for 3 times, and then Jesus looked at him, and then he repent. At that moment, I believe that his eyes does not have judgment. It fills with compassion, but I don't know what kind of compassion that is. Because me instinctively I will go with anger or sarcasm or anything with not good.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I tried many times for this compassion, but just naturally. It comes out with.
But you pick up see, when she disobeys you, you're offended. It hurts you. I mean, you're thinking about what yourself in the matter, because she says something or against you. She's against you, right? It's like war. You don't pick it up. You don't take the offense. And that's why you're angry, because you have the pain of her disobedience, right? But you have to be like steel inside. Your heart bleeds, but outwardly you have to act as if you forgive, all right, in a sense. That's what you forgive her. But most parents are provoked because how dare you hurt the one who gave you birth, right? How dare you do? I've given up everything for you. I love you, and you do this to me? Yeah, that's what God experiences, isn't he? But, the divine thing is to govern that and don't be offended. I've had a student tell me, "You're not a good teacher because I'm not learning." So I had to put that one away. Okay, yeah. You see, that's because they were not willing or able to do the work. Okay. That was where that was coming from. It was too hard. It's too hard. So you're not a good teacher because I can't, do it. But I didn't pick up the offense. You see, I've heard it before. No, I mean But my job, my calling is to teach. Their calling is to learn from me. Okay, and to make it easy to learn is my position. Okay. My purpose. But you can't force learning. You just teach. And you can't force obedience, but you must demand it. And again, in this case, you just need to physically handle her, not spank. You need to hold her until she's at peace, quiets down. She lets you hold her, okay? In a sense where they stop struggling with you because they want to get out of your hold. They want to walk and do everything they want to do. You're going to say, no, you're going to stay right here with me until she rests with you and is quiet. It's going to take a day or something. And if she doesn't obey, you pick her up and you do what with you have her do what you want her to do with you. Okay? But you have to be with her. That's why if mothers working is terrible. God has to provide mothers ability to be home. Okay. I have fathers who work 3 jobs so that his wife could teach at home. 3 jobs. Okay. It's the father decides, right? How things are going to be in the house. But if he doesn't agree, then you can't do it without him. Okay? So you and your husband have to agree, how are we going to handle this? Because the spanking or I don't want to call it hitting because you're not hitting them, you're spanking them or using physical discipline, corporal discipline we call it. But that's doesn't change anything, does it? Doesn't change her. Okay? Does that help a little bit? Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. You're welcome.